Hi, this is Kara. Welcome to my channel. Today we're gonna go through the process of how I made this postcard from scratch. This is the first few times I try to not draw on paper. Instead, I draw everything on an iPad with an Apple Pencil and the software called Procreate. This is a very famous app. If you ever do any sketches in iPad, you probably have heard of this, so I won't go into the details of it. It's not expensive from my point of view, judging from the functions that it can provide. Definitely less expensive than Photoshop, but of course it can be less powerful than Photoshop. The learning curve though could be less steep, so this is my go-to app for like as a beginner, how I want to do this digital painting with. This is a default time-lapse video created by Procreate. It's a default setting if you don't touch anything. This is good for showing the process, but I think it is not that helpful if you want to do just a tutorial on how to use this. So in case you do have an iPad and a Procreate installed on your app and on your iPad and want to try out, after this time lapse, I'm also showing step by step how I created this with some tips of how to use Procreate. If you find this could be interesting to you, continue watching. I will be actually showing videos over my iPad in later times. So the inspiration of this picture is from a favorite YouTuber who is called Liziqi. She is not a traditional artist. She's just live an artistic life in some sense. She would create everything from scratch. If she wants to cook anything, like a chicken, something, and she would just start from raising the chicken. So this is really from scratch, and she just do a lot of fancy stuff out of it. So I really admire her videos. If you have never watched them, please do take a moment to see her videos, and some of them are watched by millions of people, and she also have millions of subscribers. It's really fun to watch her videos. I also added her Chinese name characters in the picture. I know how to write Chinese, so this is easy for me. I have another app that actually can be used to handwrite this Chinese characters, which is pretty fun. Okay, so now let's get our hands dirty by going step by step of what I have done to create this postcard. And step one is just to create a canvas in Procreate, and I also loaded my draft directly into here. So this is a picture I took of my own sketchbook. Now what you need is another layer, and you simply create another layer and make the original layer transparent, and then go through the edges as you wish, and then you will basically translate your original pencil draft into a line draft in Procreate. Now the layer creation action was not caught by my camera, but it's okay. Later we'll create a ton of other layers, so you will still see the process of creating layers. I think this step is more challenging than I have imagined. So I feel it is slightly harder to control your pen when you're actually drawing on an iPad, possibly because it's kind of a little too smooth on the surface, so it does not really feel like paper. This video, I'm only using those default brushes like the round brush, the flat brush, so I didn't do any special things to my brush. One thing I did adjust was the streamline property of my brush. I set it slightly higher so that it won't capture all those smaller movement of my pen. That will help you to get smoother line drawing at this step. This is very helpful. Unfortunately, I also didn't capture that in my video. I'll just add this as a tip in my descriptions. By the time you finish the line drawing, you will have 3 layers basically. One is the background, one is the picture of my draft in my physical sketchbook, and another layer is this line drawing. Now I'm just adding another layer right below the line drawing, and this is named as flat color. Here there's an important step where I also set the line chart, the line drawing layer to be reference. This is very important because if we don't do that, the following step will not work. So I'm not sure whether we have different versions of like Procreate in different iPad versions. I have a pretty old one. So if you see kind of different definitions of things, which is okay, try it out. It's something related to reference. So when you set a reference, the coloring will be reference to your sketch. So this is important. So you can just directly drag the color and create this effect, which is super cool. Know that this step is also the reason why I want the line drawing to be as clean as possible, and I also want every like area to be closed so that when you apply a color, it will not be covering any area where you don't want. So this you need to be really careful. You don't want to create any places where you didn't fill the color. But you also don't want to fill the color to many places where you don't want. Basic at this place is already super easy. So this is the easier part compared with the normal hand drawing process. Where the painting part, you really worry about whether you have painted your color in a pretty smooth way. But in digital painting, it's by default to be smooth. You just drag the color and fill in. It's very uniform and smooth. So that's actually something we want to avoid, because if it's completely too smooth, it is very flat. That's exactly why this layer is called flat color. And after this layer, we try to make things more 3D like with the shadows and highlight and stuff. I'll really skim through the process. Note that it's not like you cannot fix it if you are unhappy with your line chart at this time. That's the magic of layers. So if you do something bad when you're actually painting on paper, it is very hard to make corrections. But with digital painting, you can just go across different layers and fix a previous layer if you want, without influence the future work you have done. So this is really nice, but it could be also a little tedious if you made any mistake, because if you draw something on the layer that you don't want to draw, it's a little annoying and you have to go back and forth and correct things or redo the work you have already done on one of the layers. After finishing the flat color, we can add another layer called shadow, and with this layer, I'm also changing the mode from normal to multiply. Here you can see an M to the right of the layer name instead of an N. It's really useful for the shadowing process, where the colors emerge together instead of just covering, like what you usually see in like acrylic or oil painting. Note that one of the layer I have enabled upper lock. So when you enable something called upper lock, you will not able to draw things outside of the shapes in that particular layer. This is very helpful for shadowing, and to enable that, you just use 2 fingers and quickly swap your layer, and then you get that. When upper lock is enabled, you will be able to see a checker background for your layer, like this one, layer 1. The shadowing part now becomes also quite easy to fix. So the problem with like traditional painting on paper is that if you made any mistake, especially for watercolor, it's really hard to correct. But now with digital painting, if you make it too harsh, it's very easy to just erase it and restart again. I just keep doing it again and again because I was not very familiar with the brushes and stuff in the digital world yet. So I did do kind of a lot of like back and forth thing. If you're experienced, you probably don't need to do this. But my point is, like, almost everything you need to be really careful about in the real world painting becomes sort of much easier in the digital world. Don't have to just do every shadow in one layer or do anything just in one layer. You can create as many layers as possible. So as I go, for example, I decided to like add a highlight layer. I also add a leaf detail layer so that I can separate these things out. And these are really helpful because you want to create enough layers so that you can correct your mistakes much easier. And also in Procreate, it's really easy to merge layers as well, so you don't have to worry about too many layers you have created just a lot as you go. Yeah, we finished the shadow, we finished the detail, and now we want to add even more highlights. So here I'm just adding all the highlights on the leaves, on clothes and everything here. Okay, so after this shape is translated from the draft to this part, most of the shadowing and highlights and details are already done. But I kind of want this picture to be busier and have more actuation of the water part. So I also add another layer, and I'm using some very cool special function of the app. So I use a different brush. I use the flat brush, and I also reduces the opacity of the coloring. Okay, so now it's a magical part. So to draw a straight line on Procreate, you don't need the ruler. What you need is you hold your pen steady as you draw, and then it becomes just a straight line for you. You don't need a ruler. See? Hold, and then you get a straight line. And hold, and you get a straight line. So yeah, we can just repeat this and create some water in a fun way. Oh, this is so much easier than using a flat brush in reality to draw a straight line. I haven't used Procreate that much, so this process for me is really mind-blowing. I really love this app and I think it has so much to explore, and I'm only using some of the like very beginner skill or beginner tricks in the Procreate world. You can define your own customized brush. You can have your own kind of color palette. All these kinds of things are worth exploring, and they're also very fun to play with. Okay, so now is the even more mind-blowing function, which is copy and paste. This is very easy in the digital world, but it's very hard in reality. So I wanted to add those smaller leaves like on floating on the water. So in order to do that, I want to copy and paste and reshape things, and this is all very easy in Procreate. So what you need is something called a selection tool. So if you Google or if you just try to find any kind of detailed tutorial on that tool itself, it can be worth the video. So I won't be going through too much detail, but just to show you how I select those things. So it's actually very easy to use the freeform. You just circle around the things you want to select and then click on the arrow, and then you get the selected one, and then you can reshape it, you can move it, and you can also make a copy of it. Yeah, as you can see, to make a copy of it, you just need to use 3 fingers and kind of sliding down the screen, and then you will get a menu which is for copy and pasting, and now you get another copy of it. Notice that by default the added one would be another new layer, and if you kind of squeeze them together, the layers would be merged, so you don't have too many copies of layers just because you make the copy. Yeah, with this copy and paste tool, all this drawing process becomes really a fun thing instead of tedious if you actually do it in reality. The last but not least, that is, you can also add a particular layer specific for adjusting the color of the whole picture. And to do that, you just add a layer that is kind of towards the top, and you use that and some color which have very low opacity, and then you can do like very easy adjustment of the color. So this is something kind of a little similar to what Photoshop can do, but this is done in a more fun way, I think. Alright, so this is like the final version. So in order to make that postcard, it's actually very simple. We just use a printer and print it out on a 5x7 inch paper. I will basically document all the materials that I have used to make the postcard, including the printer and the paper name. This video has been super long, but I hope you enjoy the process with me together. and get some of the important tips from how to drawing with Procreate. Alright, happy drawing and painting digitally. See you next time.